Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Batwoman. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with, obviously, we're in the aftermath of Jada basically turning the entire city against Batwoman. Now, we haven't really seen the repercussions of that. We just kind of got the radio host kind of bringing that up, but beyond that, we don't know if there's been any true implications. I mean, we haven't really seen that, but doesn't mean it won't rear its ugly head in the future of just the city being like, yeah, Batwoman is kind of your fault. She has remedied the situation by removing taking down those bad guys. So even if it is her responsibility, it's still going to be the question of, is that really how that's going to pan out, you know? When it comes down to the responsibility and stuff like that, will the GCPD try to do something now? Because regardless of, to be fair, she inherited this from Batman. He did keep these trophies, but it's like, right, you should, as a Bat, you should have kept all this in line, whatever the case may be. We do also have, now that they have the buzzer, they do have the means to fix Marcus, because now is the time to do it, considering the fact is that he is working with Arkham Asylum now, and he's talking about, right, you guys say the real insanity's here. No, the real insanity's out there. Batwoman, we need to kind of make her take responsibility. If only we knew her name, but he doesn't drop it publicly, because he's got his own fun and games. Plus, it's very, very true to Joker-esque isms to not, because there are certain situations and continuities where Joker does know that Batman is Bruce Wayne, but it doesn't matter. He loves the tit for tat relationship they have, the symbiotic relationship that they have. So it's like he doesn't want to ruin the game. It's like, unless it calls for it, but it's like he likes messing around with it. But he'd never want to get rid of his dance partner because he likes the tango that him and Batman do. So, and it seems like the same thing is in this case, where Marcus is like, no, it'd be more fun. I could easily ruin you by speaking your name, but it's like, no, I like toying around with you, even talking about it later on. It's because he plans on going after everyone she cares about one by one. And it's like, so I want you to suffer. I want you to hurt. So, that's what he's planning on doing. I wonder, would he kill everyone around her first, then expose her as Batwoman, and then just leave her to suffer the ramifications of that, I was quite surprised when he was walking the halls of Arkham. I was like, all right, who's he going to talk to? None other than Victor Zsasz, which is very befitting, because Victor's the first supervillain Ryan went up against last season when she became Batwoman, so it's very befitting that it comes down to, I guess technically speaking, didn't the whole Hush thing happen first? So technically, he was the first supervillain she went up against, but when he was pretending to be Bruce and everything. But it's like, no. But I think it's just interesting to bring your boy Zsasz back, and I like that. Obviously, him and Marcus hitting it off, and he's like, oh yeah, basically, look at all these marks on my body. Pretty much think of them as a resume and stuff like that, which is pretty interesting. So. But his plan was to send Zsasz after Jada. And I love the moment he's like, hey, Ryan! He's excited to see her and everything. Because Ryan went to see Jada because Jada most likely is sitting on a fountain of evidence against some of the stuff Marcus has done. So she's trying to get that while they're trying to track down the buzzer, because it can be the only means of finally stopping Marcus. Because if they give him back his conscience and his empathy, he could go back to being himself, and he won't feel the need to continue hurting and killing people, but also he wouldn't go as far as he is, and even going as far as potentially using Ryan's secret identity against her. So they need to get the buzzer fixed. So they're trying to track down the Joker's toy maker, which is interesting. He has a toy maker specifically, that being Kiki, which I almost thought you'd almost think it'd be a Toy Man type of thing, which I thought was kind of interesting. Because, he's a toy maker in the DC universe, but obviously, we know continuity-wise. Crisis and stuff like that, but we already know, that toy maker is dead. But it's just interesting in general that, I guess it never crossed my mind to think Joker didn't just build all that stuff himself. I don't know if they've ever presented him to be, he's the weird criminal mastermind that he is, which is kind of weird that you never really think of him, but he is the clown prince of crime and stuff like that. So I don't know if I think he's smart enough. I don't know how much stuff ever really showcases how smart he is when it comes to criminal stuff. I guess Gotham might be the smartest Joker I've ever really met, but obviously he's just kind of like, he just seems like a maniac just doing whatever he wants to, but there's some kind of smarts there. But I guess I never really thought about like, oh, I just assumed he made his own gadgets and stuff. Didn't know, at least in this continuity, because I did some Googling, it turns out I don't think that character Kiki Roulette exists. I did stumble across a character called Roulette, but it's a completely different character, I think. So I was curious if she was someone that existed in the continuity. From the little bit of Googling I did stumble across something, like I did watch this episode of Batwoman later, like the day after it like aired. It's like Thursday at the time we record, Thursday morning at the time we obviously recording this, which this should be going up a couple hours later from now. So obviously people have already done their articles and stuff. So like I already saw something, go ahead and jumping ahead, that said like, oh hey, did Batwoman confirm Harley Quinn's existence? And it does. At least kind of alludes to it. Because there was a whole thing about Kiki saying like, her therapist gave her all this advice, and Mary was like, I thought was that all a lie? I was like, no, my therapist did say that, I just chose not to do it. Besides, my therapist was also Harleen Quinzel, so it's kind of like, that's kind of, it's kind of take that as you will. So it does show that obviously Harley exists in this continuity, and for her to say that means her to say that exactly like that means she already became Harley Quinn in this continuity. And we know, based on what Luke said in season 1, that Bruce potentially killed the Joker. And the question is how many people know that, but it's just like Luke's like, well, notice that we ain't seen him in a couple years. He hasn't been around Gotham in a couple years. Joker. So, basic question, like, where are they storyline wise? Is this kind of like Harley Quinn in both the animated series as well as in the DC movies continuity of like, oh, she's broken up with Joker? So is this supposed to be like, oh, she's broken up with Mr. J and so she's not too heartbroken? Like, where is she? Like, obviously we know, not intentionally, but we do know some of the Bat villains are dead in this continuity. So is she one? Maybe not. Maybe she's just off on her own. I don't know. Like I said, based on what Kiki says, it sounds like it's not just like, oh, she's still Harleen Quinzel. It's like, no, it sounds like she's Harley Quinn in this. Just the question is, where is she? But, well, because the interesting thing is she has been hinted to in the Arrowverse, because like they even make like a small behind, like you see like her like in a jail cell, but you see her from like behind. So she has existed in this continuity before. So I guess that's probably Batwoman feeding off of that continuity, because she has made like a slight cameo appearance. Once again, it's just someone wearing like a Harley Quinn like type of wig or having their hair styled like that, and it's just them from behind. So you never got to see her face or anything. I think it might have been the episode that they were making a makeshift, not makeshift, but they were doing their own, like Arrow was kind of doing its own Suicide Squad type of thing. So I wonder if there's some correlation. And maybe, like I said, I think so. Obviously, most of everything's on One Earth now, so it makes sense them being able to make that reference, but still kind of reconfirming, like, at the very least, that's something that hasn't changed, because that particular cameo was post, like, I didn't know, that was pre, like, a lot of timeline changes, as well as, like, way pre-Crisis. This was, like I said, I think that was, like, season 3 Arrow, maybe, when that cameo happened. Regardless, I'm going down the rabbit hole, but it's just kind of an interesting thing. But like I said, circling back to the main point I was trying to discuss in the first place, just Kiki being the one who makes all his toys and stuff like that was kind of interesting. Also, I'm blanking on the actress's name, but the thing I best know her from is Scrubs, Carla. So I was like, hey, and you're playing a bad guy. That's pretty dope. Especially one with ties to the Joker is pretty interesting. Because Alice went along with Mary, because Mary's like, right, I'm a doctor, I should be the one to do this. It's also because Mary wanted to prove herself useful to the team, because it's like, right, she blames herself. It's like, not only did I kill an innocent person, that Hunter, all the damage I caused, like, Pamela, like, none of this would have happened if I hadn't supported Pamela. So, like, Marcus wouldn't even be up and about right now. Marcus wouldn't even be able to threaten you the way he is right now if I didn't tell him that you were Batwoman. Also, I tried to hurt Luke as much as possible by giving his dad the AI over, and everyone's like, no, it's not your fault. And the sad thing is, Mary, like, she talked to Alice because Alice was the one that was going to give it to her real, because everyone else was going to placate to her and be like, no, it's not your fault. But people telling you it's not your fault it's not going to alleviate your guilt. Your guilt comes from yourself, you know? It's just kind of like, I know I'm going on a tangent, but it's like hell in Lucifer, where it's like, Lucifer's like, no, the only person keeping you there is you. It's not until you resolve your guilt and everything that you're able to eventually go to heaven. You have to kind of like forgive yourself. You have to kind of come to peace. And like, so it's all inside. And so no matter what anyone else says, what Alice said probably cut her even deeper, because Alice was like, you want me to give it to you, Frank? Yes, it is entirely your fault. This is all your fault, but none of your friends are going to tell you the truth. None of the Bat Team is going to tell you the truth because they believe you're too emotionally fragile. So it's like, well, how do you handle it? She's like, well, you take all those feelings you're feeling and you bury them deep. She even tries to like justify it by being like, oh, tell yourself he was a terrible person, that you actually killing him was actually a good thing, and, you know, kind of bury it, like sugarcoat that on top of you burying everything. But obviously for her, she's like, I can't really do that. I'm not a sociopath. You can tell like it cut like Alice a little deeper to hear that, like, ow. I mean, especially because like we were so close before, but now it's like, right, you're back to being Mary again. But once again, she felt guilty about sending Mary down that path. It's like you kind of helped the situation become what it is, and you do feel guilt over it because of the bond that you guys created. You did have a sister again, even though you and Mary were never like that. It's not Kate, but at least you get to fill that family void to some extent. So I thought that was interesting. But I do like that Alice was the one who could immediately tell, like, oh man, that Kiki was full of BS. She knew exactly. She's like, I go by Kathleen now, but it's like, oh, I know exactly who you are and everything. So crazy recognizes crazy. So they end up going to the Joker's workshop because like she talks about like, right, my work hurt so many people. We even find out like she made like these teddy bears with like grenades in them. It's like, how many people have you hurt? It was like 5 people. I killed 5 people. It was like 2 adults, 3 children, and like 12 people were injured, you know? And Alice is a big fan of her work. It's like, right, you did all this. Like, she's kind of been apparently inactive for like, she said like for the past 15 years she's been trying to make up for it. So she was even suggesting like, in the past, she tried to justify by being like, no, the Joker made me do it. But it's like, right, all that unhingedness until like it gets proper treatment. I mean, dude, I don't know. Like, is there any proper treatment for like? I'm not saying like, oh my, like there's no like helping someone that's going through that. But it's like, we're talking about the context of Gotham. We're talking about the context of Arkham Asylum. We're talking about the worst of the worst when it comes to like some of the like most dastardly villains in the DC universe. Obviously not all of them, but like Gotham's its own breed of villains, you know? That's why like Nightwing was telling everyone in Titans, is like, no, we've dealt with some stuff. Gotham's its own cesspool of like bad, you know? It breeds its own special kind of bad and crazies, you know? And I don't know if there's any necessarily remedying that, because I mean obviously some people have certain circumstances, like Pamela's situation wasn't, it's, you know, much like Mary, it was just the poison ivy situation took over Pamela, making her what she is, but she wasn't always like that. Just like Mary ended up going dark side Mary, even though she wasn't always Mary. So hell, I mean, there's even Lee Tompkins in Gotham kind of went through a similar dark phase herself because of certain circumstances and what that led her story to be, but still. It's just interesting that it wasn't just Mary that got something from talking to Kiki, it was also Alice, because, you know, eventually Kiki said, like, she started seeing all her victims, like, they basically started haunting her, and you could tell, like, because she was like, yeah, I started losing my mind, and Alice is like, oh, like, that piqued her interest, because it probably made her start thinking, like, maybe on some level that's what's happening to me. Alice has been losing her mind for a while now, because there was the whole, like, her going in her subconscious, dealing with, like, a young version of Kate and stuff, so it's been happening for a while, so. But both of them got something out of that conversation, whether Alice wanted to be upfront about it or not. But other elements to it, obviously Sophie's in this complicated spot with Ryan. It's like, cool, we kiss, but then all of a sudden you're kind of being like, you're pushing me away. And now, like, Sophie kind of, like, it's like, no, like, trying to prove herself the entire episode. Like, Luke kind of finally figured out, like, oh, there's something going on between you two. And it's like, yeah. And I love, like, when they're eventually breaking into Wayne Tower, like, a lot of that comes up. And I love that Luke's like, because she's like, yeah, I've had it. It's like, oh, is it just because you found out she was Batwoman? Because it's like, yeah, it starts a trend. Because it's like, yeah, you found out about Kate being Batwoman, and that reconfirmed a lot of your feelings. And I was like, oh, you like Ryan? It's like, no, like I liked her before. It's like, wait, did you like Ryan back when she was a criminal? When you thought of her as a criminal? And she's like, that's not the point right now. He's like, that sounds like the conversation we should be having. It's like, yeah, that is kind of interesting. So I think maybe if I go back and rewatch season 2, you'll probably see inklings of that. Because she got to see who Ryan was before finding out she was Batwoman. Just kind of like, hey, like, that you are someone trying to turn it around, and maybe I was so quick to judge you. But maybe that's also why she was so hard on Ryan sometimes, because she was conflicted with, like, how she felt about Ryan, plus, like, how she perceived Ryan. So she couldn't, like, come to terms with that in some shape or form, maybe. So luckily they got the AI back, you know, Lucius's AI back, and they ended up finding out about all that, Marcus had planned. Obviously, the fact is he got in contact with Kiki. So it makes you wonder, was she always just waiting for like she was probably waiting for Mr. J to come find her again, but maybe he didn't. Who knows how long ago it was that Bruce finally snapped and killed. I mean, he might have been locked up in Arkham for a couple years, and then eventually, I doubt it was the Titans thing of like, oh, Bruce is going to sneak in there and bash his head in. Which I should also note, if you look in at, because they show it at the end of the episode, that room, there does seem like there's a bloody crow. I don't know if I can't remember if it was a crowbar. It looked like it could have been a crowbar. I was like, that's interesting, because like, it can't be a Jason Todd thing. Like, did he bash someone else's skull in this universe? Because, which interesting, maybe that's just supposed to be a wink and nod, because they know that the writers of this knew that Titans was doing the Red Hood storyline, so maybe that's why they, spoilers if you didn't see this past season of Titans, they did the Red Hood storyline, where Joker proceeded to beat Jason Todd to death. I'm curious if that's supposed to be a wink and nod, because it's like, because we know Bruce didn't have a bat team in this universe, so, in this continuity, so it could be like, oh, he did that to someone else and that's his special trophy. It still could have been someone that was important to Bruce. I don't know. I feel like that would have probably gotten referenced before now. I don't think they've ever like talked too much Joker related stuff. They've hinted to stuff here and there like about him, but I don't, any of his specific crimes, I don't know if they've really gone in depths about in this. So, like I said, it looked like it looked like a silver like crowbar or something like that. So like, I think it was a crowbar, but maybe I don't know. It was like in like a hung up on the wall, like behind some like glass. Like, look at this monumental. Like I said, it's just a reference, but it still kind of makes you think about the deeper implications if that's what it's supposed to be. Not unless it was something else entirely. Because that would be some. I mean, the crowbar. Like, I think it's probably significant too. Like, because Joker uses a lot of like random weapons too, aside from like his assortments of like the chattering teeth, the acid flowers, his laughing gas. Or even the buzzer. It's also interesting too, because Kiki was basically saying like, oh, that was kind of the purpose of it. I was like, oh, is that its main purpose, is to basically drive people crazy? That's interesting. It was always meant to shock people and do that. Like I thought it was just meant to like electrocute people and potentially like high voltage and kill them. But I'm like, I guess like the point was always what it did to Marcus. Maybe Joker was always trying to create more of him, create more of his legacy. But yeah, the crowbar, it seems like signature, like just like. I wonder, is it just signature to Joker just because that's it? But even like, because I know in like the Injustice game, maybe this just the second one, but I feel like it might be in the first one as well, where like part of his moveset includes the crowbar, but that might just be like it's a significant crowbar because it's the one he used to bash Jason Todd with. You know, I don't know if that's typically signature, like how Harley has like either the hammer or her bat. Typically, I think most stuff leans with her having the bat, but the mallet's still kind of a signature of hers as well. So, I don't know. Once again, going on a bit of a tangent. Regardless, circling back, like, my point was, I was curious, like, Kiki probably was just waiting for Joker to come back, waiting for someone to tap into it, and hearing Marcus wanting to be Joker Jr. made her go like, yes, we're going to be having fun, we're going to turn Gotham inside out. They do walk away with the buzzer at the end of it, and the question is, who do they plan on using it on? Part of me was like, do you think Marcus plans on using it on... Well, I'd almost think he would want to use it on his mom, but I'm almost thinking like, you don't think he wants to use it on Ryan? It's like, right, turning the bat into a sociopath like him might be the ultimate joke that the Joker's ever pulled on the bats. You know, so I think that'd be the ultimate middle finger to Gotham to do that, but we'll see. It seemed like that'd be kind of like at the crux of it, but other than that, I started it earlier, but I circled away from it like a long time ago. But circling back to Zaz, and I love that he's like, right, I'm giving you an hour. I thought he was under the impression, like, I guess Marcus didn't tell him because it wouldn't be fun, but he's setting up this hour thing of like, yeah, Batwoman's got to be here or I'm going to kill both of you. And it's like, right, Marcus set this up knowing that, well, probably hoping, I don't know if he knew that Ryan would be there. Either way, I love that Zaz is like, right, you guys are, oh my God, your mother, he's like, oh, think about it. She abandoned you, left you to the foster system, and then both of you became titans of industry. He's even like, oh, I want to congratulate you on becoming Wayne's CEO. But then he kind of lost it, so he kind of felt, he's like, I kind of feel bad about that. So it's like, sorry. So he's like, congratulations and sorry. Like, I love, like, they definitely, like, he definitely went full blown, like, I feel like they made him a little more charismatic now. Like, he had his moments, like, to my recollection when he popped up first in season 3, but I feel like they leaned into, like, the charisma of him. I'm like, it kind of reminds me of Gotham, the TV show Gotham's, because, like, that version of Victor Zad had some, but, like, other versions of that character just seem like a sick, like, but the other versions I've ever experienced of that character have been in smaller doses. I mean, because I think he's in Harley Quinn, the animated series. I think he popped up once or twice. But he's like, that show is what it is. It plays like leans into the comedic, like hyper versions of those characters anyway. But most versions, the little versions I've seen of him in a more serious tone have been like very minor, like bits and pieces, like the Telltale game, or I think he was in the first Arkham game. Like, he just easily just immediately take him out, if I remember correctly. But, yeah, because even Victor in Gotham, which once again is still a very different version of the character, he had his jokey moments, but he also could be serious too, but regardless. But I love that it's like, right, them opening up, like, Ryan and Jada, it's like, right, she gave me up for $2 million, and it's like, right, Jada's trying to justify, but being like, it's like, right, she was like, because Ryan's like, you're trying to hide your affairs. She was like, no, it's because I do love you, I do care about you, it's just, I wasn't the person I am now, so I wanted to give you a proper home, and so the $2 million was so you could be good, find a perfect family to take you in and everything. Sadly, the doctor took the $2 million because he's an asshole, and he ended up just dropping her off at the fire station. So, but I love that Ryan brings it up later on, and it's a good point because even I was like, you never bothered to check on her. Decades went by, you never bothered to check on her. That's the complicated thing, because it's not like you immediately knew who Ryan was the moment you met her, but still, it's just like, yeah, it's like you never bothered to check on her, and that's the complicated thing. And I love that, you know, I love that Victor's like, man, thank you for letting me be here at such a special moment. He's like, I'm so glad and so happy to be a part of this moment. Luckily, Ryan was able to take him down. And in that moment, Jada's like, wait, you're Batwoman. And I'm loving that moment because it's like, yes, now you realize, now you feel that guilt of what I brought up last episode. I'm like, you doubly screwed your daughter. You weren't there in her life. You kind of abandoned her. And now you screwed her over publicly as Batwoman. And now you can't put that genie back in a bottle. Like, I don't know if there's any rectifying yet. Because if she does, it's just going to make her look like, oh, you try to besmirch Batwoman? Like, to be fair, Marcus has already done that too publicly. So there's no going back without it blowing back on Jada. So she kind of has no choice. She has to kind of stick with what she's put out there. Because there was no point in the episode she was like, I'll try to rectify it. It's like, no, it's out there. And business wise, I can't do that because I'm going to lose everything I've got, my reputation and stuff. But it's like, yeah. And I love that, like, Ryan was so candor about it. She's like, you've taken everything good in my life. You took Wayne Enterprises away from me. You abandoned me. The moment I became CEO of Wayne Enterprises, you took that away from me. Now you've besmirched my name as Batwoman. It's like, all you've ever done is take from me, you know? And it's like, right, I'm supposed to, like, be, like, you know, swept up in this sob story about how you're going to leave me $2 million. What I would have wanted was a mother who'd want me to school every day, be there for me, like, ground me for, like, missing, like, staying out too late or something like that. She's like, well, what did I did get that? I had to wait 14 years to find that, you know? She was, you know, the foster system can be pretty rough, so Because even Victor was almost like, geez, you left her to Gotham's foster system? That's kind of jacked up, you know? But I love that he's like, yeah, I know you're not supposed to get attached to your targets, but he's like, you guys bullseyed me right here in the chair. I was like, shut up, Zaz. I love it. But Jada, like, you know, and she's like, you're right. You're 100% right. She's like, the fact is, but look at you now. I was like, oh, do you really have to say that? Don't be like, well, oh, look at, even though I wasn't there in your life, look what you made for yourself. But the point she was making is, I gave Marcus everything. Look how he turned out. I gave you nothing, and look how you came out. That's the thing. Like, with all the money, resources, and everything she did for him, in fact, that money and resources is what allowed him to continue doing what he's doing, like, kept him on the wrong path. Like, she tried to do everything over the years to obviously get him help, but it didn't, well, help. So, but, you know, look at what Ryan became, all without her mother's help. So she's like, in the long run, maybe you were better off without me in your life. But her and Jada did talk again, and Jada talks about, like, right, the reason why she has the name Ryan is, like, I named you after my father. Like, the fact of the matter is, she's like, I put up walls around me. It was my way. It was the only way I can compensate. You were never off my mind. I always thought about you, but if I gave into those feelings, I would have been crushed under the, because, yeah, everything I did was to eventually protect you from Marcus, so I didn't want you around, considering what he was becoming. You know, it's like I couldn't help Marcus, just like I couldn't help you. And it's like now Ryan realizes, like, right, the whole thing about my, like, putting up walls thing, it comes from you. But it's like, right, don't do that. You know, don't make the same mistakes I did, Ryan. Don't, like, put up walls around and push people away. And she realizes what she's kind of been doing with Sophie. Which Sophie recognizes, like, right, you're trying to protect me, but I'm a capable member of this team. I'm not some damsel in distress that needs to be saved. Like, I can be out here in the field like anyone else. But, you know, for Ryan, it's like, right, she's lost a lot in her life, and it just comes a little easier to push people away. Being a superhero makes it even easier. You know, you gotta keep the people you care about at a distance. But she's done with that, you know? And I love that she made the first move this time. Is like, right, and she kisses Sophie, and they kind of, you know, they do their thing. I do like there's a little bit of awkwardness. She's trying to get Sophie's pants off, and it's just like, nope, that doesn't work out. But glad that finally happened. But once again, we kind of saw the future written in stone, and I think things are going to be good between you guys. Even though it's a different future, I think things will hopefully work out well. Once again, what that means for Allegra and Chuck, you know, Chester, we'll see. Hopefully things don't end up exactly the way they did then, but we'll see. But other than that, you had Mary deciding that she was going to go and to the Hunter's funeral, and she wants to face what she's done, because it's like, right, like running away from it's not the solution. And so she gives Alice a bag and everything, and it's like, right, you should leave Gotham. This is, you know, people are going to be hunting you, like, your immunity deal doesn't exist anymore. But Alice is like, I can't leave you. I was like, right, the buzzer, you know. And it's like, because Mary's like, oh my god, you want to get help? Yes, I'll help you. But she's like, yeah, but I'm not the type to do the hard work myself. So it's like, what? Wait, the buzzer? But the buzzer is meant to cure Marcus. And she's like, yeah, but I'm your sister who needs it more. And it's like, cool. Putting her in a compromised position, because Mary wouldn't only be doing this for her dad's sake, because her dad asked her to do this to look after Alice. So not only that, you, for one, getting rid of Alice would mean getting rid of, like, one of Gotham's biggest threats. Two, you'd be getting a sister back that you never really got to know. You'd also be helping Kate out a lot by doing it. So there's a lot of good to do it, but it's only one shot left in that buzzer, and this is the only way. So what are you going to do? Are you going to save your bestie's brother, or are you going to save your sister? That's the question. And being, you know, especially because she already went through a lot to betray the Bat team, the question is, like, is she going to bring this up to them directly of, like, yeah, Alice wants me to do this, or is she going to contemplate, because, like, keeping a lot of this stuff, like, the Bat team went awry for a long time because of, like, secrets and stuff, issues between them. So, like, she adds this secret between them that's going to complicate things, especially considering Mary's not in the best place after everything that went down. So I think in the end they're going to choose Marcus, but I'm sure it's going to be a bumpy ride as Alice continues. You know, she has moments of she can be selfish. She's like, oh, I don't want to be Alice anymore. But it's like, yeah, you should put in the work. you were both very bad people made you into who you are. Even more so in Alice, because a lot of people, it wasn't just Cartwright, because obviously Sophia played her own role in making you who you are as well, but still. But I think in the end they're going to give it to Marcus. We'll see how it all plays out, though, because it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.